Let me see if I can copy the link and email it to her.
Once I know that we're live on YouTube, I can resend the invitation. All right, I believe. Okay, we are live.
Great. Thank you, Julie, and welcome everyone to the December 2nd meeting of Common Council. Hopefully it's the last Common Council meeting of 2020. This is a blessing. Not because the council meetings have been the worst part of 2020. Working with all of you has been a bright spot, but I think we'll all be happy to see the other side of this year. So with that, I'll call the meeting to order. Are there any changes, any additions or deletions from the agenda?
So Mayor, we do have the addition of the Susan Blumenthal Pride of Ownership Awards.
Yes, it's very important. And do we have our friends from Rotary here?
We do.
Great. So we'll do that right up front as a special presentation, and then we'll move to public comment. Is that okay with everyone, Council? It's our annual Pride of Ownership Awards.
Okay, so I am going to promote Ross Travis and John Baradas as panelists, along with Margaret Hobby, Scott Whittam, and Brett Bossert. All right, John, I believe that I have set the settings so that you can share your screen. And you can change our view when you get ready.
And has Scott Whittam joined also?
Scott has joined.
Yes.
Hi, Scott. Hello, everyone. Okay, thank you for sharing the screen, John. So as for those who are not familiar with this award, this was conceived as a joint project of the Ithaca Rotary Club and the city of Ithaca in 1997, when Susan Blumenthal, who served on Common Council, got together with Don Kampf, then president of Ithaca Rotary, to recognize property owners who had taken particular pride in their properties, and she felt strongly that they should be acknowledged. So that's how this tradition was born. And just last year, we named the awards in her honor for all of her dedication and hard work over many years. So the process is that nominations are made by members of the public, the Rotary Club, and the Pride of Ownership Committee. All nominated properties are within the boundaries of the city and can be referenced from a public road or street, and we don't comment on interiors of the buildings. The criteria are the project's contributions to the betterment of the community by its addition to the cityscape. We've recognized so many different types of projects, from gates to bridges to murals to large buildings on the Cornell campus and large buildings downtown, to front porches to new windows. It's really something that just stands out as representing quality and community spirit. So with that, our first award will be presented by Margaret Hobby.
Margaret, I'm afraid you're on mute. If you could unmute yourself.
There we go. Now can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. The first award is a new gate and fence at 957 East State Street. The owners are Max Pfeffer and Pilar Parra. Max and Pilar have lived in this 1910 craftsman style house at 957 East State since 1993. The house is charming with a wide front porch and a massive roof, which you can see here. But just as important to the owners is the yard that slopes down to a wide gorge a couple of 100 feet from the back of the house. At almost 1 acre, the lot is amongst the biggest in the city of Ithaca and also one of the prettiest, with perennial beds and sweeping lawns. Max and Pilar's enjoyment of their property was marred by State Street's famous traffic and even more famous deer, which treated Max's carefully tended plantings like their personal smorgasbord. Max and Pilar needed a fence, but what kind of fence? They were aware of how much their neighbors and passersby loved looking at the yard throughout the seasons of the year. And they generously concluded that they didn't want to block the view. They decided on a hybrid solution, a handsome wooden fence right in front of the house to provide privacy and noise protection. And on either side, a wrought iron fence to keep out the deer, but allow views of the yard. A wrought iron gate breaks up the solid wooden wall and draws the eye to the welcoming front door. All the work was done by Whitmore Fence Company of Dryden, and Max Pfeffer and Pilar Parra want to thank Fred Whitmore and his crew for listening to them and making their vision a reality. Congratulations.
Can't hear you, Frost.
Sorry, thank you. Thanks, Margaret. Our next award goes to Green Star Cooperative Market, and Scott Whittam will be presenting this award.
Hello, everyone. As news to no one, one of our local treasures has relocated and expanded. Their 29,978 square foot store in the new city waterfront market district has faced and overcome an opening during this odd time during this pandemic, and is widely and proudly seen as a continuation of a local success story. Owned and developed by Edger Enterprises and designed by local architect Stream Collaborative. And the new store is one of the first commercial enterprises to open in what the city hopes will soon be a new and thriving waterfront district. The relocation of the Green Star Cooperative Market from its location at 701 West Buffalo Street to its new site was a product of long planning and is the latest of a series of periods of growth and expansion for the cooperatively owned market, whose roots go back to 1971. The new store is located in an existing building on a 1.3 acre parcel and was entirely upgraded. New insulation, metal siding to improve its appearance, additions along the south and east side of the building facing Cascadilla Street and Route 13 have a timber frame aesthetic and mark significant functional elements of the store, such as entry and loading dock, and outdoor cafe, and a mezzanine stairway. Between the store and Cascadilla Street is a new 160 car parking area, incorporating state-of-the-art stormwater management practices. The building is connected to Cascadilla Street by a new sidewalk along the east edge of the lot, and new sidewalks are also installed along the Cascadilla Street frontage to connect the site with the city sidewalk network. Brandon Kane, general manager for Green Star, said, Green Star has been searching for a suitable location to expand its flagship store for over 10 years. When Lincoln Morse first approached me in 2016 to propose the former Cornell warehouse site at 770 Cascadilla Street as our potential new home. Over the next few years, Green Star collaborated with a variety of local architects and designers to develop a proposal to deliver to our co-op's membership in the city of Ithaca for approval. From the start, the support for the project was overwhelmingly positive. Green Star members invested almost $2 million to help bring life to this gorgeous and sustainable facility, which will serve as a cornerstone for the redevelopment of Ithaca's waterfront district. Our developer, Edger Inc., was an amazing partner throughout. They delivered a high quality project on time and on budget. We couldn't have asked for a more positive community-wide effort.
Congratulations to Green Star and Edger Enterprises. Thank you, Scott. And our next award, John, correct me, but I believe is 421 North Cayuga Street, correct?
No, Brinley Street.
Brinley Street Bridge. Okay, presented
Sorry.
by. Okay.
Can we change? Sorry.
That's fine. Okay. So development activity in Ithaca's West End has increased considerably in recent years, as Scott just touched on. Many new housing, commercial, and infrastructure projects have served to revitalize this important neighborhood, as well as facilitate the use of one of Ithaca's most potentially attractive resources, the waterfront. The Brinley Street Bridge project represents the latest infrastructure project undertaken by the city of Ithaca in the West End. Though the original one-lane bridge at Brinley Street had a charm in how it compelled drivers to slow down, be mindful of others, and take turns, it ultimately served as a bottleneck to the creation of additional much-needed affordable housing further south along the inlet. The Brinley Street Bridge project involved relocating the Brinley Street Bridge over Cayuga Inlet to align it with the West State Street to Gannick Street intersection, including intersection improvements, traffic signal modifications, and landscaping work. Tim Logue and Adisu Gebre, the Director of Engineering Services and the project manager respectively, went further though. In addition to easing the flow of vehicular traffic in the West End, their project also contributes to our community's quality of life with a thoughtful repurposing of the original one-lane bridge to a pedestrian, non-motorized bridge. So congratulations to the team, to the mayor, and to the council for making this project a reality. So John, our next project will be?
Waterfront Trail.
Very good. And that will be presented again by Scott Whittam.
The Waterfront Trail at Alan H. Treeman State Park Marina. Like many of you, I've been on my bike a lot this summer. And at a time when our local outdoor spaces mean more to us than ever, some 1.7 miles of paved asphalt and stone dust multi-use trails compliant with the ADA, with American Disabilities Act, were added this year to Alan H. Treeman State Park Marina's northern section. The 8-foot wide natural area trail skirts a wetland overlooking a bird and osprey nest observation area. Rain gardens and seating were added at the edge of the existing dog park to biologically treat stormwater runoff and encourage rainwater infiltration. Arching gently through the meadow north of Treeman Marina, this multi-use accessible trail spur provides exceptional wildlife viewing, shaded picnic groves, and sweeping views of Cayuga Lake. The tall meadow and forest habitats, which thrive in this once overlooked corner of Ithaca, provide a uniquely natural, peaceful, and intimate experience for the visitors. The trail's asphalt and stone dust surface follows the path of older mode trails, but add an elegant serpentine character to the route that obscures, reveals, and frames in a subtle yet dramatic progression. The varied ecology, character, and texture encourages pedestrians to fully appreciate the surrounding beauty at a meandering pace. Work under the $678,000 project was funded by New York Works and $534,000 recreational trail grant to state parks supported by Tompkins County Transportation Council and State Parks Infrastructure Fund. Designed by Peter Fry, senior landscape architect for the Finger Lakes Park System, the work was masterfully constructed by Procon Contracting LLC. Park staff noted that this trail work is in many ways a continuation of the vision of New York State Park Senior Natural Resource Planner Sue Pulvardi's long years of regional trail planning. Said Fred Bond, Regional Director of Finger Lakes State Park System. The connection to and continuation of the Cayuga Waterfront Trail and Alan Treeman State Marine Park has proven to be beautiful capstone to the trail. The Loop Trail offers inspiring lake views, an opportunity to observe an osprey nesting platform, wetland habitats, and a large pollinator area. We're proud of the seamless connection to the city of Ithaca's Waterfront Trail and the New York State Park's Black Diamond Trail. So as a distinct contrast to Stewart Park's familiar manicured recreational lawns, the weaving of the Treeman State Marina Trail, its natural exuberance into the city of Ithaca's Waterfront Trail system adds yet another gem to our crown of trails.
Congratulations to Fred Bond and New York State, and we're very fortunate to have this wonderful addition to the city. Thank you, Scott. John, our next one is 421 North Cayuga Street, and you're presenting that one.
Yes, 421 North Cayuga Street, new front staircase and entry. Owners J and C Potter. The Potters, am I on? I think I am. And
Yes.
the Potters set out to replace the front entry staircase to the home they have owned since 2006. On North Cayuga Street, the main floors of most houses are elevated by a half story from the street. Individually, the elevated, let's see, the next one, the elevated conditions add the sense of privacy from the well-traveled public sidewalk. The entrance to this home is first distinguished by charcoal gray concrete slab. The base, did I read this? The generous width of the stairs indicates that it follows a colonnaded bay system to the doorway. The remainder of the porch is untouched in terms of design. However, its references to the pattern and form of neighboring facades remain. The new staircase design combines geometric lines and angles, bringing together square wooden supports, patinaed heavy gauge wire mesh intermediate between the top and bottom rails, a custom-made rectangular stainless steel handrail, and low-profile galvanized steel post caps. This follows the beadboard of the ceiling porch redesign, along with the door refinished in natural stains. The result is a material medley of natural surfaces and patinas. The stain on the treads is slightly darker, while the risers and shadow lines add depth and dimensions to otherwise unexpected stairway function. Staircase was designed by the homeowners. Construction and carpentry by Tim Stewart and Jay Potter. The owners continued renovating the interior exterior. Black painted sash windows are being installed in December, and I think they're already there. We are looking forward to following progress.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that. This is one of those small gems that we talk about that are also worth calling out. Last but not least, we have an award for the Stewart Park Inclusive Playground presented by Brett Bossert.
Thank you, Frost, and thank you to both Rick Manning and Diana Reisman. I believe they're here attending the meeting. The Stewart Park Inclusive Playground is the project, and it had a real bevy of collaborators to make it possible, including a design team that included Parkitects, Play by Design, Earth Play, T.G. Miller Engineers, and of course, the Friends of Stewart Park, who will be receiving the award. Project partners and advisors also included, quite obviously, the City of Ithaca, the Friends of Stewart Park, Racker, Ithaca College, and the Finger Lakes Independence Center were all involved in the process as well. And the project couldn't have been completed without the support of a $1 million New York State grant to the City of Ithaca, arranged for by Assemblywoman Barbara Lifton, the support of the Park Foundation, and of hundreds of other large and small donors. The first plans for this new and inclusive playground at Stewart Park were designed to be accessible for children and their caregivers of all ages and abilities. The design team worked closely with physical and occupational therapists from partner organizations to develop final plans that were approved by the City of Ithaca early in 2018. The Friends of Stewart Park and Play by Design organized a one-week community build back in September of 2018, where more than 900 volunteers participated to build the first phase of the playground, with a play structure for preschool children, a sand play garden, swings, and a boulder net climber. Construction of the second phase took place from the fall of 2019 through the summer of 2020. It features a large and highly accessible school-age play structure designed by Parkitects, along with a curved berm with an accessible pathway that provides access to multiple entries to the playground at a variety of elevations. In addition, a cover for the historic carousel was installed during this project to protect the iconic park gem for years to come. The playground was carefully knit into the fabric of mature trees to provide shade and character to the playground, and future phases will include the development of a new splash pad and an adjacent accessible bathroom building. This project is a wonderful addition and just one of the many great projects that have been spearheaded by the Friends of Stewart Park, and it's quite an honor to give them this award this year and likely more in the future as they continue to restore and renovate our great lakeside park.
Thanks, Brett, and special congratulations. I'll echo that to the Friends of Stewart Park. As you can see, these awards, even in this difficult time, show the community spirit that we have and also demonstrate what a special place we all live in and how much care and pride we take in this wonderful community. So with that, we will let you get on with the important business of governance, and we look forward to seeing you again next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Frost. Thank you very much. Thank you, all of you, and to the Rotary for continuing this wonderful tradition named after Susan Blumenthal, recognizing projects big and small. And special shout out to all the city staff and contractors who worked on the city projects. Thank you for recognizing those projects. I know everyone will remember 2020 as the year that the Brinley Street Bridge reopened. That will be the main thing we take away from this year. But in seriousness, that you took the time to recognize that and all the hard work that went in for years to make that bridge open is very touching and moving. I know that you didn't have to recognize that, and I appreciate that you did. Same with Stewart Park playground, which is, again, now more than ever, a really important resource for folks trying to get out of the house. So thank you all very much, and we'll move now to public comment. Ask Julie and Dan to allow folks into the meeting for the public comment period, which has a 3-minute maximum. And yes, please take it away.
Okay, Julie, you want me to admit folks, or do you want to?
I would love it if you would take that away, Dan.
I am happy to. So we have only 2 speakers today. The first one is Hadas Ritz, and after Hadas will be Molly Kornblum. So I am going to admit Hadas.
Hello, my
Hi.
name is Hadas Ritz. I'm an engineering faculty member at Cornell. I commented on the topic of the 5G design guidelines to this council in August, and I'm here to do so again. In particular, I want to share with you some quotes from the final report of the Commission to study the environment and health effects of evolving 5G technology in the state of New Hampshire. To become acquainted with the issues relevant to 5G radiation exposure and health, the Commission heard from 10 recognized experts in the fields of physics, epidemiology, toxicology, and public policy. All but the presenter representing the telecommunications industry acknowledged the large body of peer-reviewed research that shows that the type of RF radiation generated by wireless devices can have a deleterious effect on humans. The World Health Organization and the whole insurance industry are hedging their bets against RF radiation because of potential harm. The significant disconnect between the FCC's pronouncements that cell phone radiation is safe and the findings of thousands of scientific studies was one of the major issues that the Commission sought to address. Why are the FCC radio frequency exposure limits set for the United States 100 times higher than countries like China, Italy, Switzerland, and most of Eastern Europe? The Telecommunications Act of 1996 was adopted before the health risks and biological effects of RF radiation to the human body were fully known to the scientific community as well as the public. Why have thousands of peer-reviewed studies showing a wide range of statistically significant DNA damage, brain and heart tumors, infertility, and so many other ailments been ignored by the FCC? The Commission believes that it is important to prioritize citizen safety, particularly as 5G is an upgrade rather than the provision of wireless service to unserved areas. That concludes the quotes from the report. I want to say that the report clearly lays out the uncertainties in safety and the limits of the possible benefits of a 5G build-out. I was happy to hear your commitment to addressing these concerns in the codes. I trust that you've been working diligently with Campanelli to ensure that we find a way to protect the well-being of Ithacans. There may be a time limit with this, so I want to make sure you're moving forward in a way that gives sufficient time for public review of the guidelines, and I look forward to an update on where you are in the process. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. So next is Molly Kornblum.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, council members. My name is Molly Kornblum. I'm a longtime resident of downtown Ithaca and a mother of two and a nurse practitioner. I've been following the 5G progress in the city, and I haven't heard any updates from the council in a few months. I want to express my extreme concern about the proposed distance of cell towers 8 feet from building fronts as stated in the design guidelines. That sounds much too close to me. In Shelburne, Mass, their codes are designed for maximum public safety, and they've established a minimum distance of 1,500 feet from homes and 3,000 feet from schools. I really cannot fathom how in the city of Ithaca we have decided that placing a cell tower 8 feet from my home or my child's school is safe. I understand that you're working with a lawyer regarding this issue. I hope as he works with our city telecommunications codes and these specific design guidelines that he, like the city of Shelburne, Mass, has maximum public safety in mind and establishes a minimum distance of at least 1,500 feet from homes and 3,000 feet from schools in order to protect us and our children. Thank you so much for your consideration and attention to this matter. I really, truly appreciate your time. Thank you.
And that is all we have.
Thank you. We'll go now to privilege of the floor. It's an opportunity for council members to respond or talk about anything that you'd like. Yes, George, and then Cynthia.
Thanks, Mayor Myrick. I'd like to thank the speakers, and I do hope that we can get an update from the city attorney about where the guidelines are, and because we made some recommendations a few months ago to add to those guidelines, and I have to admit I forget what they all are. So perhaps Ari can give us an update maybe this week. The other thing I wanted to mention is the city lost 3 of our constituents this past week to COVID virus. They're residents of Oak Hill Manor, which is on South Hill in the 1st Ward. A number of residents are sick. A number of staff members are sick. I just want to say on behalf of my colleagues, we are very sorry for the loss of life, and we are very hopeful that everybody else will get better. And I'd also like to give my sincere condolences to families and friends of the residents we lost.
Thank you, George. Much appreciated. Thank you.
And I to provide a brief update now or later, or whatever you would like.
I think now is good. So that's fine with everybody.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just very briefly, the city has retained Mr. Campanelli as requested by the council. Mr. Campanelli is starting work, and we hope to have substantial progress in the pretty near future. I think it'll be measured in months, not weeks, but I believe a short number of months is my hope. And we are definitely taking account absolutely of public safety and health in the process, and looking to obviously remain in compliance with the law at the same time that we account for all of the very helpful public comment that we received.
Great. Thank you, Ari.
Yeah.
Cynthia.
Well, first, George very eloquently expressed the thoughts and concerns that I had with regards to 5G and requesting the update. And then Also with regards to the residents and employees at Oak Hill Manor. I look forward to learning more about the situation as to how it got to the volume of positives that occurred there at one time. And I do believe that we should be receiving an update from the county on this soon. Ari, so when, just a question, this is a question that I've been fielding from constituents concerned about 5G. I understand that Campanelli has been retained to review both the city code as well as the design guidelines. And obviously to look to retain the most authority to the city as possible with regards to control of the installation of these 5G devices. Could you tell us a little bit about any kind of direction that he has been given in terms of proposing draft design guidelines and code? Are they looking to be restrictive as possible and with regards to health and safety?
Yeah, I mean, he's been given the instruction to provide options to the that provide the city with as much authority and discretion as possible in managing 5G in the city, and how that plays out will ultimately be a question, of course, for the Common Council when this comes back to you. But yes, as I said, accounting for public health and safety is obviously a big piece of that question. And no sooner than I say those words, we need to be clear, it's a tricky piece of the question because a lot of the legal commentary in this area, right, says that, I mean, the law, in fact, explicitly says that we're supposed to leave it to the federal government to account for health per se, right? Now, that doesn't mean we in Ithaca want to do that, and that is why we want to identify as broad an area of local authority as possible in regulating 5G, but that will be the needle to thread.
Thank you. Thank you
I
very
just
much.
want to chime in really quickly before we go any further down the 5G road. It's not on the agenda, and the mayor usually recuses himself for this topic, so we should probably do that if we're going to have any more discussion on this topic. Just point of order.
Yeah,
Thank you. That's a good point.
Yeah, trying to virtually recuse myself. So I have a relative who works for Verizon, and I don't believe he would stand to benefit, and I would certainly not stand to benefit one way or the other, but I have been recusing myself since the beginning of these discussions. So I would continue to, if this discussion is continuing tonight, I'd ask Deb Mollenhoff to take over chairing until it's done. But as it's not on the agenda, so it's sort of free flowing. So let me recuse myself now. Deb, you take over chairing and let me know when to come back.
So I guess the question is, do we want to spend time? We did spend time on this at CA last month. We did get the update and this information from Ari at CA last month. George, just one quick thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I just think it might be helpful to get an email update from Ari about where exactly our guidelines are at present. Just as a reminder.
Well, George, to be clear, Mr. Campanelli only recently started work, so that's a pretty simple update. The update is that we prepared the draft design guidelines that came to council a number of months ago, and since then council asked that we retain Mr. Campanelli, and he is beginning work, and we will have updates mostly coming directly from him because he is the one that the city chose to retain, but we will of course stand by to assist him in any way we can in the near future, and we've actually asked that he'd be available for some direct consultation with council in the process as well.
I guess I'm asking about the specific request that council made about the design guidelines when we talked about that, if they've been included.
Yeah, that information is certainly being conveyed, has been conveyed to him, and he is beginning work. I think we'll need to see what drafts and memos he comes back with, and we'll certainly vet them against the request the council has had, work with him on getting that to the point that it needs to be for coming back to council, and then it will come to council, and you'll have a chance to look at it as well. But I don't have any, I don't think it would be productive for me to write you a memo that explains what we already provided you, because it's, at this point, what we have is what we provided you and the knowledge that we've now retained Mr. Campanelli to move forward in updating that.
Well, I don't want to take any more time either, but council specifically requested that certain things would be added to the guidelines, and I want to know if that has.
No, you're right. I agree with that. That's true. And those things we have told Mr. Campanelli that, and he will work on incorporating them. And to the extent that he doesn't, we will flag that for him and work on incorporating them as well. And by the time it reaches council, as a result of Mr. Campanelli's work and ours, we hope to have incorporated all of those elements. You're right. Yeah.
Thanks.
Anything else on this topic? Okay, hang on, let me get Svante back.
Okay, and I'm back. Any other privilege of the floor? Thanks, Deb. Okay, seeing none, we can move now to the consent agenda. Would anyone like to move the consent agenda? Moved by Deb Malenhoff. Is there a second? Second by Duxon. Any discussion? No, I guess not. Consent agenda. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. In this case, it's 8-2. We're wishing well for both of our colleagues, Graham Kerslick and Stephen Smith in Fourth Ward, who are under the weather. So we'll move now to City Administration Committee and Alderperson Malenhoff.
Great, thanks. First, we have a resolution authorizing implementation and funding for federal eligible costs and state cost and the transportation federal aid project. Whereas this project for State Street, MLK Street, Route 79, Mill and Pave, known as project, is eligible for funding that calls for the apportionment of the program to be borne at the ratio of 80% federal and 20% non-federal. Whereas the city desires to advance the project by making a commitment of 100% of the non-federal share of the costs of preliminary engineering design. And whereas the engineering and design are exempt from further environmental review as type 2 actions, therefore, the council here resolve that the council hereby approves the above subject project, subject to and further environmental review of construction. Further resolve that the council authorizes the city to pay 100% of the federal and non-federal share of the preliminary engineering design work for the project. Further resolve that the sum of $300,000 is appropriated from the issuance of bonds made available to cover the cost of participation in this phase. Be it further resolved that the council creates a capital project. Oh, shoot, Steve, we never filled that in the agenda. We'll fill that in and then we'll friendly amend it, unless you know it right now.
Yeah, it should be 880.
880, capital project 880, East State MLK Junior Street Mill and Pave, to include the project cost of $300,000. Further resolved that in the event the federal and non-federal shares exceed the amount appropriated, the council will convene to appropriate excess amount immediately. Further resolved that the mayor is authorized to execute agreements. The superintendent of public works is authorized to execute certifications or reimbursement requests. And further resolved that the project will be undertaken with the understanding that the final cost of the project to the city of Ithaca will be roughly 20% of said portion, estimated at $60,000 of the $300,000 authorized for this portion in monies and in-kind services as managed by the superintendent of public works and monitored by the controller. And it's further resolved that a copy of the resolution be filed with New York State Commissioner of Transportation. Be it further resolved, this will take effect immediately.
Second by Cynthia. Any discussion?
No, this was pretty straightforward. I think Tim gave us a nice overview of the project. We're of the mindset that if we can get federal money for anything, especially 80% of a project, that we should do it. And I don't know if anyone had any specific project related questions, but they can go to Tim. I see Tim's here.
Cynthia?
For the benefit of the public, Tim, could you describe what section of East State Street is to be covered with a new milling and paving? I know that there's lots of eagerness for areas there. So if you could describe where this is.
Yeah, the current intention would be to go from about the bottom of the hill at the Tuning Fork intersection up to about Eddy Street is the current extent.
Oh, okay.
So it doesn't quite get up to Mitchell Street, but almost.
Is there plans in terms of segments to address farther up the street by Water and Bridge?
No, not currently. We mill and pave that area 8 or 10 years ago or so. So we don't have a larger project scheduled for that at this point.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Good. Thanks.
Thanks. Moving on to 4.2. This is a local law that's a companion to an item that was in consent amendment of the city code for late fee penalties. Whereas in many sections of the city code, the late fee structure specifies adding interest in the amount of 12% per annum or a $3 per month charge, whichever is greater. And whereas this late fee structure in city code provisions implemented by ordinance or local law, an amendment requires both an ordinance and a local law. And whereas the city's finance department now uses Munis software, and due to the new limitations of the software, only one late fee can be imposed. And whereas the city chamberlain's office has determined that in most cases, it is more beneficial for the city to impose the 12% per annum interest late fee. And whereas amendment of the city charter and certain provisions of the code must be accomplished by local law and others by the accompanying ordinance. Now, therefore, be it enacted by the council as follows, and then it just lists in detail what I just mentioned about choosing the 12% per annum being more beneficial to the city. So I'll move the rest as written.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second by Cynthia. Discussion.
We just talked about a little bit about this at CA. Steve can give any more information if people have questions. We did ask about software capacity to be modified to have the either or option. It doesn't appear that that's something that we can do. Steve and his team did a calculation about which would ultimately be more beneficial, the one or the other, and this one ended up winning over, but by slightly. I don't think it was a significant amount. So, and Steve can probably answer anything more in detail.
So this will need a roll call vote when you're ready.
Thank you. Okay, it seems like we're ready. So go ahead and call the roll.
Okay. Alderperson Brock,
Aye.
Alderperson McGonigal,
Aye.
Alderperson Nguyen. Did we lose Alderperson Nguyen?
He's muted.
Oh, he's muted. I'm sorry, and I wasn't looking at my screen. I was looking.
You might also be
Or
frozen.
frozen.
He might be
Doc, you're frozen.
Frozen, yeah.
Okay, we'll come back to him. Alderperson Murtaugh,
Aye.
Alderperson Gerhart,
Aye.
Alderperson Fleming,
Yes.
Alderperson Mullenhoff,
Yes.
Alderperson Lewis.
Yes.
Okay, and Alderperson Nguyen, if you can hear me.
We have to have a new category now called ayes, nays, abstentions, and frozen. Doc, maybe if you can hear us, maybe you can put it in the chat.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Well, let's call it an absent for the vote.
Okay.
That will
Will
carry.
it still, if it's roll call, does it need a certain number to pass? Is this one super majority?
It doesn't, this one just needs a regular majority to pass.
Okay.
Great. So that carries then
That
7.
carries 7-0. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Any, actually, yes, there's one more on city administration. Go ahead, Chair Melino.
Yep, that's okay. This is a refunding bond resolution. And this is a resolution authorizing the issuance pursuant to section 90 or section 90.10 of the local finance law, refunding bonds of the city of Ithaca. So whereas the city of Ithaca heretofore issued $3,044,137 in public improvement bonds dated August 2013, pursuant to duly authorized bond resolutions, authorizing serial bonds for city purposes and bond determinations, certificate of the city controller. Such public improvement serial bonds now outstanding, maturing on August 1 annually in each of the years 2021 to 2035, both inclusive, more fully described in the refunded bond certificate. And whereas it would be in the public interest to refund all or a portion of the $2,195,000 outstanding principal balance of said bonds maturing in the years 2022 to 2035, whereas such refunding will result in present value savings and debt service as so required by this section of the local finance law. Now therefore be it resolved, and I will just move the rest as written, and that details all the legal language of making this action.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second by Cynthia. Discussion, questions?
So Steve can explain the details of this, but we said major kudos to Steve for working on this in these tough budget times to be able to refinance and realize this much of a cost savings on our debt service to the city is really commendable. So Steve, if you want to give people any additional details on this, that'd be great.
Sure, Deb, thanks. So this is basically like refinance of your mortgage. And so this is giving us roughly about $320,000 based on current rates of savings over the next number of years, starting in 2021. And roughly it's about $21,000 a year savings. So it's basically just reducing our interest rate on the outstanding bonds that we have currently for this. And so the comptroller, the New York State comptroller, suggests that if you are refunding these bonds, that you need to at least achieve 3% savings. And in this case, we're actually saving over 13%. So it's a worthwhile endeavor for us to do this. It saves us money in the future. And we looked hard to find some kind of savings. This kind of process of refunding is a little more restrictive than it has been in the past. So it's a little more difficult to find these savings, but we did find some savings. So this is here for vote. Thank you.
Well done. Very well done, Steve.
So this also requires a roll call vote. And I think that we're fine with the membership numbers that we have right now. So Alderperson Brock. I'll just do my routine, my script, so I don't get screwed up and forget somebody. Alderperson Brock.
Aye.
Alderperson McGonigal. Alderperson Wynn.
Aye.
Alderperson Murtaugh.
Aye.
Alderperson Gerhart.
Aye.
Alderperson Fleming.
Aye.
Alderperson Mullenhoff.
Yes.
Alderperson Lewis.
Yes.
That carries unanimously 8-0.
Thank you.
Nothing else from city administration other than just to let everyone know that we did the same thing that we had to do in November because of a potential holiday conflict. So the CA meeting will be the Monday instead of the Wednesday. I believe that's the 21st is the date. So that will modify a bit when items are due, but just to give everybody that heads up. December 23rd was kind of on the edge of whether or not it would be a good idea to hold it. So we voted to move it to that Monday. So just heads up. And I think we're good.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you very much. We'll go now to Planning Committee and Chair of the Planning Committee, Seth Murtaugh.
Thank you.
Did we want to check to see if Steve had a report first?
Oh, yes. Gosh, we just jumped right over the controllers report. Thank you, Julie. Steve, controllers report.
I'm sure I can give a brief update on some of the financial numbers for 2020 as we head into the final month of the year. On parking, we are seeing a shortage of about $1,200,000 to date. Of course, we know we did not collect for a period of time with the parking. And so that obviously has impacted our revenue collection there. We are starting to see a ramp up a little bit of parking in the last couple months, but now that the students or a majority of the students will not be here for the remainder of the year, we'll probably not see much more revenue collection there. So again, about $1,200,000 off of budget at this point in time. Sales tax continues to be a troublesome area. We currently are about 15.4% off budget at this point in time. Roughly almost $2,100,000 currently off budget. And we expect to be about $2,400,000 or roughly around that by the time we get all the collections in for the month of December. So we're just seeing, sales tax numbers are uncertain for the foreseeable future. We did make a reduction in our 2021 budget. Hopefully that number will be close to where we come in, but right now, especially with COVID increases, and hopefully we don't see further restrictions in our economic situation. So we'll be continuing to follow that number very closely. The one bright spot that we have continues to be the building permit fees. Overall, we've collected about $400,000 or $600,000 over budget. So that is a very positive area for the city finances at this point in time. And looking forward, it continues to look to be positive into 2021. Fine revenues, we are off budget about $270,000. So again, the courts were closed for a period of time, so that's impacting our revenue generation there as well. Looking at some of the other funds, trash tags, as you know, we did not require trash tags for a period of time, about 2 months. Right now, we're looking to be off budget about $70,000. We have made up some ground there, but certainly we will not be at budget by the time the end of the year rolls around. In the water fund, our water revenues are just about at budget, a little higher than budget at this point in time. And same for the sewer rents or sewer sales at this time are both, water and sewer are both just above budget at this time. So some impact on revenue as it relates to students not being here fully for this year. Definitely has given a little bit of a negative impact in that area, but it seems like at this point in time, we will make our revenue budgets in both water and the sewer fund. So that's just a quick look at this point in time. We have obviously December to have further collections. We will also have, we will make our retirement payment mid-December. And that will give us about a 1% discount for that payment. It's considered early by the state if we make it at that time instead of February of next year. And we also should receive our last state aid payments. We received 2. We already have received 1 to date. We should receive about mid-December our last state aid payment. And again, it looks as if we will be have a reduction in that aid payment of about 20%. So the state continues to withhold about 20% of revenue from us. And it looks to be continuing that trend into 2021. So that's the quick look at this point in time.
Thank you, Steve.
Sure.
Now we'll go to staff and the planning committee.
Thanks. So our only item is dogs on the commons. So I'll go ahead and read this. This is item 5.1, an ordinance to amend chapter 157 of the City of Ithaca Municipal Code entitled Commons to allow for leashed dogs on the primary commons. Whereas chapter 164, article 2 of the City of Ithaca Code, dogs and other animals, states that in all areas of the city, it is illegal for dogs to not be restrained by an adequate collar and leash when not on private property. Whereas chapter 157 commons further states that on the primary commons, no animals are permitted without a special permit, with the exception of service animals providing assistance to people with special needs and police working dogs. And whereas because the primary commons is the only place in the city of Ithaca where dogs are not permitted, many people are not aware of this rule and bring their dogs onto the commons. Whereas this inconsistency with the rest of the city creates confusion among dog owners visiting the downtown area and makes it difficult to enforce any rules regarding dogs. Now, therefore, be it ordained and enacted by the Common Council of the City of Ithaca that Chapter 157 of the City of Ithaca Municipal Code entitled Commons is hereby amended as follows. And I'll move this as written. I guess I can just go ahead and read this out. The change is no animals are allowed on the primary commons except by special permit. This provision does not apply to leash dogs as allowed by Chapter 164, Article 2 dogs, and any service animals providing assistance to people with special needs and police working dogs. All dogs on the commons are subject to the following rules. Dogs will be leashed at all times. Dogs will be limited to no more than 2 per person. Handheld leashes will be no longer than 6 feet. Tethering a dog to a stationary object will not be permitted. No person will allow a dog in his or her custody to defecate or urinate on the primary or secondary commons without immediately removing said waste. Dogs may not enter any planter for any reason at any times. And I move as written.
Thanks. Is there a second? Laura Lewis, appropriately. It's a second. Discussion.
And I'll just say, you know, we had a pretty lengthy discussion about this at PEDC. It did pass unanimously at the committee level. I know Laura had sent around an email where she had some suggested changes that I believe we all saw. I guess we can maybe discuss that now, or if there are other questions that people have about this.
Yes, Laura.
Thank you. Yeah, we did have a lengthy discussion and there were some revisions made, additional rules added at the PEDC meeting. I was suggesting that a slight edit on the language in the ordinance, the 157-15, the statement, all dogs on the commons are subjected to the following rules. I was suggesting that we change that to all people with dogs on the commons are subjected to the following rules, because it will be people who need to follow the rules. And if they do not, it would be people who would be ticketed. So that was one edit I was suggesting. I then had a question about in section 2, I just wanted to be sure where it says chapter 157 of the code is hereby amended to delete sections 157B-15E. And I just wondered if that should be 157-15B to 15E. I think that I sent that to PEDC members and to Jennifer Kushner. I think those 2 changes were the significant ones. And this is tough. It's the case that, to my mind, there are people visiting the commons with their dogs. There are people, increasingly, there will be residents living on and near the commons. What seemed to me is that the current ordinance is not enforceable. It's not being enforced. So if we have something that is unenforceable, it calls, to my mind, for revision. And so I was pleased to support this revision. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, Deb, and then Donna.
Just have a couple of questions. I wasn't able to make PEDC, so apologies if this is repetitive for some of you. One, I feel that I will end up supporting this, but I have a bunch of concerns. Can you remind me what the penalties currently are for any of these? So if anybody violates this, then what happens?
Yeah, maybe Ari, that's a good question for you.
Sorry, you couldn't hear me there, could you? The default provisions in the code most likely are the ones that apply to this, which are usually in, I think, most sections of the code. We can look back at section 1 of the city code. If I recall, let's look briefly. I think it's going to be in the ballpark of a couple $100 fine is the short answer as a maximum. So maybe that's the full answer you're looking for. If you want more detail, I can try to pull it out of the code.
Escalate if it's a second offense.
I think it does, if I remember right. The way our code is set up, some particular provisions have their own penalty provisions written into them, but most provisions of our city code default to the penalty provisions that are in, I believe it's in section 1. Yes, 1.1, penalties for offenses. Unless a different penalty is specified, violations of the code shall be punishable by a fine of not more than $250 or imprisonment for a term of not more than 15 days and not less than $100 or 25 hours of community service. And there's a bunch of other details after that. But and again, there are certain code provisions that are excluded from that default. So we can go back and I'll be glad to go back and check that if you'd like. But I don't want to take your time holding up the meeting this moment while I check it.
Yeah, no, what I've heard as the argument for modifying this is that, well, this is unenforceable, so we shouldn't do it, right? So I'm concerned if we're just making now the other side of it unenforceable, which is the least desired activity. If that is now going to be unenforceable, then that's a concern. I know that we are in a situation where we don't have the same level of, let's say, a beat cop on the commons anymore. I hope we get back to that someday, but I do hope that this is something that if there are dogs that are causing a problem, it's a lot easier to come and confront someone when we see a dog doing something that most dog owners know you should not do, right? So that's what I'm hoping. Maybe if we flip this, then I just want to make sure that we still do have provisions for that. I have a question about also number 2 and number 5. So I'm sorry, number 3. It says handheld leashes will be no longer than 6 feet. Many people, myself included, use those retractable leashes. We don't have like different leashes that we bring around with us. Might you want to add something like, or locked shorter than 6 feet or something like that? I don't know how detailed you want to get into it, but I know for a lot of people, they'd happily comply and just keeping it, in certain places where in certain parks and on the trail where it has to be shorter, you don't want that retractable leash going. But I don't know if everybody has different size leashes. That's just me, the dog owner, talking about that. So I don't know if people would want to consider that, or I don't want to create something that also is not able to be enforced legally, because what is someone going to measure, what you've retracted it at? So that was just one concern. And then in number 5, it says about the, cleaning up of the waste. I think I did hear something about the DIA providing bags and stations and that. And so that's, I'm happy to hear that. I don't think, do we expect anyone to clean up dogs' pee like that? It's sort of a weird thing to put in there. again, as someone who walks a dog all over the city, there's only one form of defecation that we clean up regularly, not the other one. So I don't know if you want to put something in there that asks what would you expect someone to do? You know, how would you expect someone to clean that? I'm not sure that that is an expectation, but do you want dogs peeing in the middle of the commons? I don't know. So you may have discussed this at length at the last meeting. I apologize if I missed it. So those are my current questions.
Respond.
Sorry, yeah, and I see Seth with his hand up. You want to jump in?
So I was earlier, and the resolution itself references this, but earlier today I was reading, there's a whole section that deals with dogs. I think it's chapter 164, article 2. And, you know, it's really thorough in terms of what it spells out. It says that dogs have to be kept on a leash, that owners have to clean up after their dogs. And that's really to govern dog behavior through the rest of the city, so that when you're like walking your dog down the sidewalk, you know, you're being responsible. And, you know, that presumably you could be prosecuted under those laws. So, I was really reassured reading that, because it means that even though we're lifting the prohibition on dogs on the commons, it still means that dogs will be subject to those other laws, whereas they are throughout the rest of the city. So it's not like by lifting this, we're going to have some kind of free-for-all on the commons. It's those protections would still be in place. So that's to answer your first question. The second question, I'm the same. I use a retractable leash. That was my understanding of it when we voted on it at PEDC, that it would have to be kept to 6 feet. So yeah, so the idea would be it should be locked. I mean, whether we want to actually specify that in, you know, through language, I'm not sure. I sort of assume that was the case. It doesn't necessarily prohibit retractable leashes. It just means that they have to be kept shorter. And then the third point you made about, I had that same concern. I think it's kind of ridiculous to expect people to clean up urine. I would suggest maybe, I mean, really what we're getting at with that part is, you know, we want dog owners to be responsible and to clean up after their dogs. I mean, maybe if we just said something like that, like dog owners should be responsible and clean up after their dogs in accordance with the rules laid out in, you know, chapter 164, article 2. I mean, maybe that's the easiest way to go about that.
So then maybe I'm reading this the wrong way. It says this provision does not apply to leashed dogs as allowed by chapter 164, article 2. So the way I read that is that 164 doesn't count when you're talking about the commons.
I see. Yeah, I see that point.
So yes, I think it's great. All that other stuff about dogs is in that other section, but then you take it away by putting that sentence in here that says this doesn't apply to that other section about dogs. Unless I'm reading it wrong.
Yeah.
Ari, do you have thoughts?
I think you're right now that you say that, Deb. Yeah, it's a problem.
I'd be happier to hear that other more thorough section is annexed to this very specifically. Not that we're saying ignore that other really thorough section about dogs. Let's just follow these loosey-goosey rules for the commons. That I'm not comfortable with.
And I would say I don't necessarily think it's wrong to have like extra rules for the commons. I think those other rules should apply, but like if we want to apply other rules to the commons and say like spell out, say like, okay, like we can have no more than 2 dogs because this is the commons, that's fine. But I think you bring up a really good point that we don't want to like exempt all of the commons from the other rules that apply throughout the rest of the city.
Right. One way you can go about that is to say that those other provisions shall only apply to the extent that they're more restrictive. But the real answer, which I'm guessing planning staff can speak to in terms of the way they drafted this, would be that you want to actually go through provision by provision and compare what's in this ordinance compared to 164 and make sure they you mesh them the way that would work best.
So Joanne asked me if she should be here tonight, and you know, I think they were sort of under the impression that this passed pretty easily at PDC, and I was like, well,
sorry.
No, I mean, what I told her is that if worst came to the worst, we could always just table it for a month and we could get them to take another look at it.
The way I read that sentence is no animals are allowed on the primary commons except by special permit. This provision, which I think they're referring to the special permit, this provision does not apply to leashed dogs as allowed by Chapter 164, Article 2, dogs. So I think it's saying leashed dogs don't require a special permit on the commons. I think that's what that language is referring to, not that it's not covered with the provisions of Chapter 164.
To me, it doesn't read that way, but again, it might be just a legal conundrum.
Oh, I see your point, Julie. No animals are allowed on leashed dogs as allowed by Chapter. Article 2, dogs.
I read it the same way Julie did.
Icons except.
I did too.
So maybe we should we say the preceding sentence does not apply to leashed dogs?
I like that. I think that adds a lot more clarity.
Yeah.
It's
Has to be
fairly
clarified, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Or if you're trying to distinguish dogs from other animals, then just start it as just say no animals are. If you're saying any other animal other than a dog is not allowed unless you have a permit, then
that's what I think is intended here, because there are instances where many other types of animals have shown up on the commons, like goats and snakes and rabbits and all kinds of different things that people carry around with them.
So then maybe it's better to just make that letter A and then make a letter B that then deals just with dogs. Because I think the confusing part is when you say this provision does not apply. What provision are you talking about?
The prohibition of animals. Why don't we just say
Which
that?
is, go ahead.
That the prohibition does not apply to leashed dogs and any service animal providing assistance, blah, blah, blah.
I mean, I hated wordsmithing on the form more than anyone, so I don't want to divert us into a grammatical conundrum here. But this didn't read clearly. When I read it a few times, it didn't read clearly to me. And I feel like if we are going to have an issue where we want to make sure that we are able to enforce what we are saying about creating a better environment, if we're going to allow dogs on the commons, we don't want this behavior, then we have to have something written that is very easily understood and is defensible if someone gets a ticket for it. That's all my concern.
I mean, I agree with that. I think you're right. I think there's some ambiguities here that could prove problematic. And I'm happy to table and go back with planning staff and try to get take these concerns back, and we can try to get the language a little clearer.
Okay. I'm seeing a couple nods, but I also see Rob. I saw Cynthia's hand, then Rob, then George.
I was just going to move to table it and send it back to committee or allow staff to look at it and bring it back. So I'm rereading 164-2 over and over and over again, and in light of what we're saying, it doesn't mesh. It's not easy to understand, as Deb identified.
Okay, Rob.
Yeah, just quickly, I want to address one of the points in Laura's email. Did you ever resolve the 6-foot length of the leash? Because I did a quick scan of the code and didn't see a specific foot length in there, and I just wondered if the PEDC got to that.
Seth, go ahead.
Well, I mean, the 6 foot just is specifically applies to the commons. I don't think the other section, whatever it is, 164, specifies a length of the leash.
Oh, okay. I thought it had referenced that, but that's fine.
No.
And I agree, if we're making more restrictive rules on the commons, they should be very specifically articulated here as well. So that's fine. That part of it is fine.
I have George, and then I'll ask if there's a second to Cynthia's motion to table. So George, go ahead.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with tabling. I have a question. I agree with Laura that the current ordinance is not being enforced. I don't know that it's unenforceable. I know that a lot of people think the signs at the ends of the commons are inadequate and too small. Bigger signs might help. But my main question is, are these new regulations going to be enforced?
Yes. So I think the difference between enforcing a prohibition and enforcing the regulations is in the prohibition leaves a lot to the officer's judgment about who's in transit and who might live on or near the commons. So obviously people who live on the commons and are taking their dog off the commons, or people who are in transit through, officers have to stop and say, hey, where are you going? Where do you live? Is this dog not allowed? That's a hard thing to enforce, and it's caused officers to just pull back and not engage at all. But spotting an officer that's not on a leash, spotting a person who leaves some droppings behind, those things are easier to spot and differentiate, even if you don't have to know anything about the person, whether they live on the commons, whether they're in transit, et cetera. It removes a lot of that ambiguity. So the new rules would be easier to enforce, and the police department would enforce them as they're able. So I'll hear that George is a second to Cynthia's motion to table, and we can continue this discussion at the planning committee with all the relevant staff. Is any further discussion on the motion to table? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carries 8-0 unanimously. I believe that's 8. Thank you. Seth, any report from the chair?
Nope, that's it.
Great. So we'll go now to, I'm lost in my agenda. We'll go to appointments. We have a number of appointments, reappointments mostly. Would anyone like to move some or all of them?
I'm fine moving all of them.
Thanks, Deb. Is there a second? Second by Rob.
Could I ask a quick question? We also had a late one come in for Lou Vogel for the Board of Appeals on Building Code. Would people like to wait till January for that one, or are you comfortable? It's a reappointment, making that tonight.
I'm fine adding it to my motion.
Okay. And looks friendly to the seconder, which was Rob. Thank you. All those in favor of the appointments? That carries unanimously. Great appreciation for the volunteers who serve on these committees, especially now everything's so weird. People still step forward and are offering their time and their talents to the city, which is really appreciated. Any reports of council liaisons? I know there is a report of, well, is there a report of city clerk?
No, I have no report.
A report of city attorney.
My only report would be in a proposed executive session, should somebody care to move and second that.
Thank you. To discuss, we have to.
Oh, I'm sorry, to discuss a personnel matter.
Thank you. Moved by Donna. Seconded by Rob Gearhart. All those in favor of entering an executive session to discuss a personnel matter? That carries unanimously. We will not have, there will not be a vote coming out of this.
Correct.
So there won't be any more voting items tonight, right? Usually we adjourn the meeting after, but this might break it up oddly on YouTube. Would it be preferable to just adjourn the meeting now and then enter executive session, or is that not kosher?
I think you can go into executive session. I can stop the stream. I can stop the recording. I can make you or someone the host so that I can step out if that works.
Okay.
But I would
that works. And
I would take a 5-minute recess. Let me ensure that the stream is indeed stopped, and I can chat or text you to let you know that that's the case, and you can resume your meeting.
Right.
I'd be happy to be the host if you need me to, Julie.
Okay, sure.
Yes, from one wizard to another. That's from Julie the Dead.
Do we need to go to a different room in the house?
You actually
just need to
stand
take a
up,
brief
turn around.
recess.
Stand up, turn around, sit back down. You're okay. Okay, so we'll we've moved to go into executive session. So we'll do that now and we'll pause the live stream.
Thank you.
Did we have to vote on that?
We did vote on it.
We did vote, sorry.
We are still live, so hold on.
I don't see the same normal controls. Like I don't know if you see them or not. The same controls to stop and start streaming. It's like they disappeared. I don't have them. Oh,
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can.
Yes.
Okay. I'm on our YouTube channel and I cannot figure out how to turn this off. I have it paused. Anybody good at YouTube that knows where I can find this?
I don't, but what if we quick created a new separate meeting? We all left this meeting, joined that one, and then Julie, you could stay here in this one, and then we can rejoin this meeting when we're done. Is that too intense? Does that make sense?
So either you would have to do it with your license or Ari would have to do it with his license.
I'll do it now. I'll send an email to council with a new link.
And Dan is saying go to YouTube Studio and stop it there. Upper right corner. Thank you, Dan, from far.
I actually think it's better anyway. I mean, so we can keep this meeting streaming and keep it live with just Julie. So if you just hang tight, everybody else, feel free to leave this meeting and I'll send you a link shortly.
Yeah, and in fact, I think we shouldn't only feel free to leave it, but we need to leave it so that there's no potential technical overlap with audio from one meeting entering the other.
Okay, see you all soon.